Immortality is a trait that a lot of people want to achieve. Not everybody, but I think it is safe to say that everybody doesn't want to die young. Many have voiced this ambition, such as Peter Thiel, Larry Ellison, Sergey Brin, and Jeff Bezos. You can't blame them. If I had billions of dollars, I would want to live forever too. Let's have a look at the human mortality rate throughout the years. It is clear to see that the life expectancy rate has risen significantly throughout the years. So what caused this? If you have a look at this specific chart, you'll see around the mid-19th century the life expectancy rate skyrocketed, and if you have a look at one of the highest causes of mortality during the time was infections. For a long time, infections were the biggest contributor to the high mortality rate throughout history. This was until Joseph Lister pioneered the idea of antiseptic surgery that prevents infections by using carboxylic acid to disinfect wounds and sterilize surgical instruments, which reduced the infection rates and the overall mortality rate. And of course, in 1928, Alexander Fleming discovered Penicillium notatum, which was a mold that killed a wide variety of bacteria. Alexander Fleming's contribution to minimize infection rates through his discovery of penicillin led to Howard Florey and Ernst Boris to use it in large quantities, marking the antibiotic era. Infections are still dangerous. As of 2019, it has taken 7.7 million lives, but like the past century, that number has deflated in the following years after. So what is the highest cause of mortality now? The highest cause of mortality now is heart disease. In 2019, it was revealed that heart disease was responsible for 33% of deaths in the world, with cancer being second with 18%. Heart disease rate has skyrocketed in the past 30 years, with a rise of 60% globally, going from 12.5 million a year in 1991 to 20.5 million in 2021. This may coincide with obesity rising throughout the times, tripling the rate from 1960. The obesity rate actually coincides with another high cause of mortality, cancer. There is a chart that is quite staggering. This may have something to do with the fast food expansions or the fast food booms in the 1950s-60s, and the snack food industry growth in the 1970s and 80s. Since then, it has only gotten bigger. Our food is more chemical, and the budget for marketing has only increased. Preservatives. BHA and BHT were introduced in the mid-20th century, becoming more prevalent in the 1950s and 60s. Sodium benzoate, adopted in the late 19th century but gained more widespread use in the mid-20th century. MSG was developed in the early 20th century and gained popularity in the mid-20th century. Tartrazine, a color additive, became more prevalent in the mid-20th century, especially in the 1950s and 60s. Xanthan gum or guar gum gained popularity in the late 20th century. Sweeteners, high fructose corn syrup, HFCS, became widely used in the late 20th century. Splenda, saccharin, and acesulfame potassium was developed in the mid-20th century and gained popularity in subsequent decades. Silicon dioxide and calcium silicate was used for a long time but gained more attention in the mid-20th century. Citric acid and phosphoric acid was increased usage in the processed foods industry in the 20th century. If you have a look at the countries with the highest cancer rate, it is all first world countries. If you look at the countries with the lowest cancer rate, it is all third world countries, where these chemicals aren't as prevalent. One can make the argument that the mortality rate of these third world countries are so low that they don't make it to an older age where you're more likely to get cancer. That is a good point, but if you have a look at the other countries with the highest cancer rate from 0 to 14 years old are Canada and the United States, 18 to 49 are New Zealand and the UK, and from 50 and above are South Korea and Japan. Keep in mind that cancer rates increase as one gets older. The focus is on childhood to middle age. Perhaps an upgrade in the food industry or accountability would help the mortality rate. If you look at the animal on Earth that is the longest living, it would be the Torotopus dornhead jellyfish, which are immortal. They have the ability to regenerate their cells to its earliest form. If a Torotopus dornhead jellyfish experiences stress, aging, or scarce of resources, they get to regenerate their cells to a much healthier, younger self. The jellyfish is able to do this from a few factors. The immortal jellyfish contains a high amount of cellular plasticity. Cellular plasticity is crucial for the repair and regeneration of tissues in the body. Certain cells, such as stem cells, possess the ability to differentiate into various cell types, allowing them to replace the damaged cell or lost cells. This process is fundamental for healing wounds, restoring tissue integrity, and maintaining the overall function of organs. Recently, scientists have found a way to help tissues in the body heal, regenerate by using a special method called transient reprogramming. In this method, they introduce certain factors OCT4, SOX2, KLF4, and MYC, which they also call OSKM. During this process in mice, they discovered that the levels of vitamin B12 decreased throughout the entire body. So the scientists gave the mice extra vitamin B12, and it turned out that this made the tissue healing process work even better. They also found that vitamin B12 is connected to a special mark in the cells. They call it H3K36Me3, which helps in making sure that the cells only do what they're supposed to do. When they gave more vitamin B12, this mark worked better, making the healing process more efficient. The conclusion of this test was the importance of vitamin B12 to reprogramming cell and tissue repair. Where does one find vitamin B12? Vitamin B12 is most prevalent in meat, especially in the organ and kidneys. 3.5 ounce, 100 gram serving of lamb liver provides an incredible 3,571% of the daily value for vitamin B12. Other foods provide lots of vitamin B12, such as beef, clams, chicken, turkey, salmon, tuna, trout, eggs, sardines, and dairy. In conclusion, it is very important to eat meat for cell and tissue repairment and maintaining overall youth. The country with the greatest reputation for longevity would be Japan. One thing that is unique about Japan is their attention to detail to their farming. In other countries with poor farming techniques and diet can lead to a suppression of vitamin B12 in food products. For example, Japan is the only place in the world where you can eat chicken sashimi called torisashi. Yes, you can eat raw chicken in Japan. Any other place in the world, that is a death sentence. However, in Japan, it is an expensive dish. Japan values fresh and high quality chicken as well as efficient farming techniques. For example, most countries inject antibiotics, hormones, and other growth promoters in their farm animals. These are very beneficial for farmers as it prevents bacterial infections and reduces losses, which results in large production. However, these substances have raised health concerns and ultimately led to Japan to put strict laws on these components. Simply put, Japan values quality over quantity. Japan is one of the largest consumers of fresh fish. Emphasis on fresh. There's been a lot of concern over fish farming and the contamination involved in the seafood in certain areas. I stumbled upon an interesting article that researches the fish markets in Japan. Here's the quote. We spoke with Mr. Tagaki, who works at the Tokyo Market Sanitation Inspection Center. He said, "Our job is to make sure that the proper temperature is maintained in the place where the Siri Orkasan inspects it to make sure that there are no unsanitary environmental conditions." Mr. Tagaki, in most cases, tuna and other seafood must be kept at 10 Celsius or below, no matter what their season. Large fish, like tuna, are auctioned off without being stored in polystyrene boxes or other packaging, so we also have to make sure that they are properly placed on aluminum pallets and not on the floor, and otherwise ensure that the environment is sanitary and free of dirt and debris. Use a special device to measure temperature and make sure that the tuna is being kept at 10 degrees Celsius or below, and they can also visually tell that the fish is fresh. The guys at the market are belting out their calls back and forth. They're trading tuna that's been checked by the staff at the Tokyo Market Sanitation Inspection Center. Mr. Tagaki continues, "One thing we have to pay particular attention to when we're inspecting seafood is whether poisonous fish has been mixed up in the products. Many fishermen simply box up whatever they catch in their nets, and we have a few cases a year where something poisonous gets mixed in. There are even some that are so dangerous that they can be life-threatening. If you put them in your mouth, our inspections are there to make sure that things like that don't get shipped out." Standard of food quality play a big factor in their longevity. It is easy to assume their longevity is attributed to their high consumption of fish, and it makes sense since it's the high amounts of omega-3. It is important to note, though, that Japan isn't even in the top 10 fish consumers per capita in the world. According to Our World data, Japan is ranked 13th in the world. This showcases that healthy food is important, but good quality food is what makes the difference. If we look at the oldest people ever recorded and their background, we see some similarities in their habits. They all had large families, more than 4 children. They exercised every day, frequently interacting with friends and family, had young parents, especially the mother, born during the fall, and religious. Now, this all may be just a coincidence. There are correlations with longevity and being religious as well as having lots of kids. Then again, having lots of kids is often associated with being religious, so perhaps being religious is one of the bigger benefactors of living long. Google and their company Calico has dedicated their research for human longevity. Former Google scientist and futurist Ray Kurzweil, who has won the National Medal of Technology in 1999 and was later in 2002, was inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame. He has made some bold predictions about the future of human longevity. Kurzweil predicted that humans will reach immortality by the year 2030. Keep in mind, Kurzweil made these predictions in his book Singularity is Near in 2005, and by reaching immortality, perhaps he didn't actually mean all humanity, but only the ones who can access this technology. Think of the quote by William Gibson, "The future is here, it is just not distributed equally." Kurzweil is hopeful in the advancement of biotech and genetic engineering will accelerate at such an alarming pace to expand human life, but another aspect that Kurzweil is optimistic about is the use of AI. Kurzweil believes that humans and AI will morph into a hybrid of a sort, as well as using microscopic robots to repair our bodies. This could range from removing harmful substances, repairing damaged cells, and delivering drug treatments to targeted areas, and even floats the idea that one can eat whatever they want without the use of exercise and not get fat. This was a paragraph from Kurzweil's blog in 2003. Nanobots in the digestive tract and bloodstream will intelligently extract precise nutrients we need, call for needed additional nutrients and supplements throughout our personal wireless local area network, and send the rest of the food we eat on its way to pass through for elimination. This phenomenon is also included in the brain area, from upgrading cognitive functions to repairing damaged tissue, preventing age-related mental diseases. Not only that, even the idea that one's consciousness could be downloaded into a computer continue one's life long after the death of their bodies, although that sounds like a terrifying episode of Black Mirror. Who knows, maybe that consciousness is downloaded into a computer can be distributed to a robotic or superhuman body in a lab. Supplements are another factor that play a role in our anti-aging process. A new recent supplement known as senolytics. Senolytics are drugs that target and eliminate senescent cells, which accumulate as we age and contribute to various health problems. First senolytic drugs were discovered to selectively remove these troublesome cells. Senescent cells resist natural cell death mechanisms, causing inflammation and harm to surrounding tissues. Senolytics work like a hit-and-run strategy, temporarily disabling these resistant cells. In studies with animals, senolytics have shown promise in delaying or improving a wide range of age-related issues, from frailty to various diseases. Early trials in humans indicate that senolytics may introduce inflammation and improve overall health. Clinical trials are ongoing for conditions like diabetes, pulmonary fibrosis, Alzheimer's, and more. However, it is still too early to use senolytics outside of these trials until more research is done to ensure their safety and effectiveness. There are other supplements that are involved in the race against time. David Sinclair has brought these supplements to light in his anti-aging lab. I previously mentioned David Sinclair in a video on iSight.
We had this breakthrough a couple of years ago, and so we found that there was a way to get the scratches off and reverse the age of cells.
In his study, Sinclair restored optic nerve cells and sight in mice with vision loss from both aging and a condition that stimulated glaucoma.
The way we did that in the mice, and we cured blindness with them, was to turn on 3 genes that are normally on in embryos. And when we turn those 3 genes back on in the adult tissue, the mice regenerate and they get their vision back.
And now, in what the researchers are calling the first study of its kind, Sinclair and his team were able to age the mice and then make them younger again. In this video shared by Harvard, these mice are the same age, yet one is visibly older. How did they do it? By literally breaking up the DNA, forcing the body to repair itself, which he says accelerates
Sinclair's
aging.
team has thrown everything but the kitchen sink at the problem of mortality, including sirtuins, a class of proteins involved in regulating cellular functions, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, also known as NAD, resveratrol, a compound found in red wine. Resveratrol is a thought of a mimic the effects of calorie restriction, a known factor associated with increased longevity. With new technology of gene therapy and modern medicine, immortality isn't something that is in a science fiction novel. Eventually, these sci-fi novels we read as kids are not going to be categorized as a fiction book, but a look into our future. which we may see more of than we originally thought.